Um, so this first news clip there from the left was yesterday's news. So I just added this at the last moment. I saw some breaking news that the opposition leader in Venezuela had been captured and then was released 3 hours later. I don't know if you saw that piece of news. But it made me think, why is it that it seems really common in our society when we don't like something that we use force to achieve it? Here's another example. You might remember Navalny was the opposition spokesman against Putin in Russia, and he was arrested, put in jail, and he died there earlier last year. And then the journalist who covered the trial has also been arrested. And you look at these stories and you think, why is it that coercion seems to be a way that our society operates? We see this in everything from the relatively minor parenting response of "because I said so," to even as I was reading the use of pesticides in gardening. The garden doesn't do what I want, so I'm just going to force it to do what I want because I don't want to take the time and the effort. Why do we always go for force? Well, I guess it's because it's easier and quicker, right? I mean, changing people's minds the long way and the hard way, it takes time and it takes effort. And so surely it's easier just to order change and tell people what they should do and tell people how to behave and make the rules and just say to everyone, you must follow them or else. I learned a term as I was investigating this idea this week. It's called psychological reactance. So psychological reactance is a built-in resistance to being told what to do. Who here likes being told what to do? No one, right? There's something in us that kind of riles at the thought that someone would tell us what to do. There's a built-in resistance to this. In fact, as I was researching this, one psychologist said that he'd written a list of everything he had to do, which included planning a holiday. But as soon as he came back to that list and saw planning a holiday on his to-do list, he didn't want to plan the holiday because the list was telling him he had to do it. I thought that was interesting, that sometimes just being told what to do, even if it's a good thing and something we want to do, can make us say, no, we don't want to do this. The use of force can quite literally force someone into silence or to following the rules or to behaving ourselves, but it rarely changes the heart. So if you want to change someone's mind about someone or someone's behavior about something, how can you do this? Why am I telling you about this? Well, in the whole month of January, we're not having a series. We're having free topics where the preacher can talk about anything they like. And I actually hate free topics because I never know what to talk about. I like series because there's structure and you can follow a theme. And so I contacted Ewan, who preached last week. And I said, what did you talk about? What are you going to talk about? This was before he spoke. And I thought maybe I can pick up on some of the things that Ewan's talking about and I could extend them to create, a little mini series. For those of you who were here last week, Ewan's message was a great reminder to be other-centered as we go into 2025, as we're called to be many times in Scripture. And I'd previously discussed that with Ewan and wanted to follow on from the theme. However, one of your comments actually made a thinking in my mind and has had a lot has changed my sermon for today. Because one of you, who shall remain nameless, I was talking to after the sermon last week, and the person said, didn't really want to be told that. And I thought, is that some way that we react? Is it sometimes that we think, we're just told what to do when we come to church. We're told to be good. And I don't think my personal opinion was that Ewan wasn't telling us what to do last week, so this isn't a criticism at all of the sermon. But it made me think, why is it that we don't like to be told what to do, and how can we better respond? Should I use that one? Thank you. Well, just as the Bible encourages us, it's all right. It's all right. Just as the Bible does encourage us to serve our communities and to encourage one another and to make a difference in our world, the Bible is also scathing of people who just follow the rules for the sake of following the rules. Here are some of the Bible texts that I found. Next slide, please. The flicker's not working for some reason. Here's Amos chapter 5, verse 21. It says, I despise your religious festivals. Your assemblies are an stench to me. Even though you bring me burnt offerings and grain offerings, I will not accept them. Though you bring choice fellowship offerings, I will have no regard for them. Away with the noise of your songs. I will not listen to the music of your harps. Now, you could say this person to whom this is directed to, they're attending church, they're singing, they're doing the things they're supposed to do to be a good Christian, right? And yet, for some reason here, God's saying, I hate it. I'm not interested in your following the rules and doing the right thing. This same thing is in the next verse. Next slide, please. Isaiah chapter 1. Here it says, stop bringing meaningless offerings. Your incense is detestable to me. New moons, Sabbaths, and convocations, I cannot bear your worthless assemblies. Your new moon feasts and your appointed festivals, I hate with all my being. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. Now, these festivals and assemblies were things that God had asked the people to do, right? So these people are following the rules. They're doing what they were told. They're following the rules of Judaism that Moses had given to the people, the Israelites. They told them, this is how you should be good Jews, and they were doing the right things. And yet here, Isaiah is saying, God hates it. How can God hate us doing the right thing? And in the next slide, we see this also in the New Testament, Matthew chapter 7. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who's in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from you, evildoers. This is a really challenging text because here are people who've done all the right things. They've gone out and helped people in their community. They've followed the rules that God has given them. They've done what they were told, and yet here they are being highly, highly criticized. In fact, here Jesus calls them evildoers. But my favorite of these verses comes from a location that you might not have considered. And this is 1 Corinthians 13 that Elizabeth read to us. And I asked her specifically to read it in a different version because sometimes texts that are very familiar to us, we stop hearing them because we've heard them 1,000 times before. And you might not expect 1 Corinthians 13 to be a place where you're criticized for doing the right thing. It's page 988 in the church Bibles. And if you've got one of the church Bibles, I'd encourage you to open it and have a look at it. Here it says at the start, if I speak in the tongues of men or of angels, but do not have love, I am only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and can fathom all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have a faith that can move mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. If I give all I possess to the poor and give over my body to hardship that I may boast, but do not have love, I gain nothing. Here Paul is saying this isn't about what you do. It's not about following all the right rules and doing all the right things. It's all about what's going on in your heart. Which made me think about the idea that I mentioned at the start around coercion. You see, being told what to do never ever gets anyone to really change their mind. The only way we can change our minds about anything is actually if we encounter love. when it was read at the beginning of the service, did anyone think, why are we reading 1 Corinthians 13? This isn't a wedding. It's interesting. I think if Paul knew that we only really read this chapter at weddings, he would turn in his grave. Because actually, while some people may say this is a beautiful piece of Paul's writing, and indeed it is, it's actually quite a criticism of people who follow all the rules, do all the right things, and yet miss the point. In fact, if we go on to the next few verses 4 to 7, where it says, love is patient, love is kind, does not envy, etc. All of these words, these descriptors for love, either in the positive, what love is, or in the negative, what love is not, all of these words have already been mentioned in the book of 1 Corinthians. I read the whole of 1 Corinthians through this week. And if you read the whole book from end to end in one go, it takes about half an hour, there or thereabouts. You get a sense of the overall picture of what the book of 1 Corinthians is all about. And here Paul is summoning up how the 1 Corinthians should be behaving themselves. But in the previous chapters, he's listed these things that they're doing. He's saying you're not patient. You're not kind. You do envy. You do boast. You are proud. You do dishonor others. You are self-seeking. You are angered. You do keep a record of wrongs. All of these words have already been used in the book of 1 Corinthians as Paul is telling the church, hey guys, you say you're Christians, but you're missing the point. You're doing these things that aren't correctly reflecting the name of Jesus. I heard one commentator actually says that some people look at this piece of writing here as, I don't know if you've ever heard of a purple patch, when something is excellent, when it's really, really good. Some people have called this Paul's purple patch, but the commentator I read said this is more a purple-faced patch, which I thought was quite good. This is the Corinthian church being told, this is what you're not, people. This is how you're not living up to the calling that is on the Christian's life. This is almost beginning to sound like more things to do. If you thought it was about me telling you what to do, this time it's just love more, people, love more. Which brings us back to coercion. No one loved more by being commanded to do it. Which begs the question, what is love? Let's look here at John chapter 4, which is the next slide. It says, this is love, not that we loved God, but that he loved us and sent his son as an atoning sacrifice for our sins. If you went to a wedding and someone stood up at the front and said, now I command you two to love each other, you would think that was a little bit strange. Because when you fall in love, it's not about a command, it's about joy, right? It's about wanting to love that person, wanting to be committed to that person, wanting to choose to be in a relationship. Have you ever been to a wedding where the couple is so much in love it's almost awkward and a bit embarrassing to everyone else that's there? And while on the one hand it's a beautiful thing to see, there's no coercion there. There's no insisting. There's no someone telling them that this is how they should be, or this is the only thing that actually changes a heart. When we look at Jesus and we see the amazing love that he has for us, it changes who we are. I'm going to tell you a totally fictional story that you're going to obviously see is a fictional story as soon as I start telling it. And I'm going to pick on Pastor Fraser and Julie and family as people who are in this story. So can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so Kat and family. It's Abby's 18th birthday in this story, okay? So all three of your lovely children are now fully adults. And so you decide, Mum and Dad, that you are going to buy a gift for your children for Abby's birthday. It's going to be for all three of them. You're going to buy them a car. And in case you're trying to work out what that car is, it's not a real car. AI generated it, so I don't know what it is. But a nice car has been purchased. And girls, you've got a car for the three of you to share, a fancy car. And mum and dad say you can go anywhere you like, but there's only one rule. You can't leave the mainland, the island of Australia. As long as you stay in Australia, you can go anywhere you want. Well, the girls get together and they say, well, where should we go today? Let's go for a drive. This is super exciting. And they decide, let's start by going south. Let's go to the southernmost point of Australia. And that's not so far. It's just down at Wilson's Prom. That'll be a nice day trip. So they head off down there and they get to the end of the mainland and they stand there looking out. And they think there's Tasmania over the ocean and this is such a good fun adventure. And they go home and mum and dad say, where'd you go today? They said, oh, we went to the southernmost point of Australia. Oh, how exciting, how awesome. Well, they decide we're going to go further this time. And so the next day they say, where should we go this time? I know, let's go to the easternmost point of Australia. And many of you might know that's Byron Bay. That's the Byron Headland there. It's one of my favourite places in Australia. So they head up the coast and they go to the easternmost point of Australia. And they have a wonderful time checking out the great things that Australia has to offer. And they come back home and mum and dad say, where did you go? What did you do? And they said, oh, we went to the easternmost point. It was wonderful. We looked out and we could see all the way to New Zealand almost. And then all the way to Chile if you keep going. And, that's fantastic. Anyway, then they go, well, let's go to the northernmost point of Australia. So they take off for another road trip. And I don't think that car would make that. But, they gave it a go and they went up to Cape York. And they had a fantastic time exploring the most northerly point of Australia. They came home. Mum and dad said, where did you go? We had the best time exploring the far north Queensland. It was a great, great, great holiday. Now, I knew those three, but I actually had to Google. Is there anyone here who knows where the most western point of Australia is? Anyone? I looked it up last night, and now I've not written it down, and I've forgotten it. It begins with S, and I've forgotten it. Anyway, that's embarrassing. I've forgotten. So there's a headland, and actually it's way out in the middle of nowhere. In fact, it's like 1,000 k's from the nearest town. It's 980 kilometres north of Perth, all right? Steep Point. Thank you. Steep Point. Google saves us. So they went all the way over there, and they're standing there, Steep Point, the most westerly point of Australia, and they're looking out and they're thinking, the next thing that way is Africa. Like, wow, what an amazing country we've got. Well, Sophie says, why do we have to only stay in Australia? I mean, mum and dad are kind of taking our fun away, right? I mean, surely we should be able to go further than that, right? No, says Ellie. Mum and dad made the rules. We need to go home. And Abby's like, come on, we got a long drive ahead of us. Well, they take off and they drive back home. But it's kind of niggling in their heads, like, why do we have to stay in Australia? Why can't we go further? Mum and dad are just keeping good things from us. Why can't we go to Africa? Like, it's just across the water. Why don't we do that? And so they say to mum and dad, when mum and dad say, where did you go? They say, we got to Steep Point and we looked out over the ocean and we thought, why can't we just swim to Africa? That'll be fine. We'll be fine. We can do that. And mum and dad said, that's crazy talk. Like, you'd definitely die if you tried to swim across the Indian Ocean. Like, what are you talking about? Plus, you've got the whole of this country to explore. Like, this could last you for years exploring the country of Australia. What are you doing thinking about going further? Haven't I given you enough? Well, the girls start plotting, though. They think, no, this country's not big enough for us. We've got more to offer this world. We can go to Africa. And so one day they take off, they jump in their car, and they drive back to Steep Point in Western Australia. And they decide, right, this is us. We're going to dive into the water and we're going to swim to Africa. Well, Mum and Dad wake up and they realise the kids have gone, and they realise where they must have gone, and they go, oh. Well, Mum and Dad have a conversation. Julie and Fraser say, you know what, we were actually quite happy before we had kids. We'll just let them go. It's fine. We'll just enjoy our lives, just the two of us. We don't need any more children. That's all right. No, that didn't sit right with them. So then they said, well, maybe we'll just have another family. We could just have 3 more kids and just create a whole new family. And now you know this story's definitely fiction, because Julie's like, no way. But go with me. We could create just a whole new family. Give up on that one, because those kids that, they rebelled. They didn't do what we told them they had to do. But Fraser and Julie are like, no, we can't let our children just go off and die. We can't allow that to happen. Now, what you didn't realize is in her youth, Julie was an Olympic swimmer. And so she's a very talented and brilliant swimmer in this story. And so can we get the next slide, please? And so at the end of this story, the curtain closes as Fraser and Julie have driven over to Steep Point, and Julie dives off the rocks to swim after her children, risking everything to go and rescue the children that she loves so much. Hopefully you can see my silly story there is an analogy of the great love that God has for us. God gives us far more than just a car and one country to go play in. God gives us everything, and yet it's not enough for us. It wasn't enough for Adam and Eve. They had to go and help themselves to what they wanted. They weren't interested in just settling with what God had given them. And God could have said, you know what, let's forget about that planet. Let's just let them go. Or let's just create a whole new planet and have new children and forget about those ones. But it wasn't good enough for God. God loved humanity so much that he had to create a rescue mission. He had to do something to go out to rescue those kids who had gone the wrong way, who had made a mistake, who were swimming towards certain death. And so Jesus made the decision to come to earth, to die in our place because of his great, great love for humanity. Next slide, please. And this is the only thing that causes anyone to do anything. It's not that we do the right things because we're told to or we're commanded to. The only thing that changes hearts is encountering that love of Jesus. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 reminds us that by beholding we become changed. By looking into the face of the love of Jesus, we become people who are different from the people that we were before. We can't be compelled or coerced to love. We love by falling in love. I invite you in 2025 to fall in love with the beautiful character of God this year, who showed his love by giving everything for us. Thank you.